There 3 years on is the subject of today's Inside Look.
Fireworks in the sky and explosions of joy in the streets. Thousands of Libyans gathered in Martyr Square in Tripoli to celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the revolution that brought down Muammar Gaddafi. Some of those celebrating were too young to remember life under the dictator.
Today I'm happy in my heart and in my soul. It reminds me of the moment of our liberation, historic moments in this nation that will be written in history for the coming generations.
Today my happiness is indescribable. Great joy. What can I say? I think I'm going to fly with joy. I hope that my country will be united together, and may God protect all Libyans.
Anti-Gaddafi protests first started in the eastern city of Benghazi in February 2011. A month later, a UN-approved coalition led by France, Britain and the US launched an offensive against Gaddafi's forces. In October the same year, Gaddafi was captured and killed by rebels, and Libyans hit the streets to celebrate the end of his 42-year rule. But lawlessness and political instability still reign in the North African country. Libya's leaders insist progress is being made.
I want to tell the Libyan people that they can be proud of what they've accomplished. Libyans have managed to start from zero and create a state.
Leftover weapons from the revolution circulate, crime is rife, and the United Nations says it's concerned about the course the country is taking.
Well, for more now on the state there today, I'm joined by specialist and former British ambassador to Libya, Oliver Miles. Thank you for joining us, sir. What are your thoughts here? We just heard that the UN is saying it's concerned about the course Libya has taken since the overthrow of Gaddafi, and yet Libya's leaders are insisting progress has been made. Do you agree? Has progress been made there in the past 3 years?
Yes, I do agree. I think I'm an enthusiast for the Libyan revolution. I think it was a very happy event, and I think the Libyans have every right to feel proud of what they achieved, getting rid of Gaddafi and setting up the beginnings of the structure of a democratic system. Since then, power has changed hands, I think, twice. Different leaders have taken over peacefully and through a due legal process. In the last few months, they seem to have lost momentum. And the fundamental problem now is that the government is extremely weak. It doesn't seem to be able to face up to the serious problems that are around it. It hasn't collapsed. It's not a failed state, but it's very weak.
So what is the answer, sir, to making that government less weak, to try and get some handle back on the state of affairs there in Libya? There are hundreds of armed militias that are still roaming the country unimpeded today. What can be done to get the control back on the security situation?
Well, I think the security situation has got to follow from the politics. The first thing to do is to get a solid structure in place for government. And they've made they're making a start on that again. They seem to have lost momentum, as I said. But on Thursday, there is to be an election at last of the vitally important committee, which is a committee of the General National Congress, which is to draw up a constitution. And they have 120 days to do that. That's what they need. They need to have the central authority established. It was sketched out. The first steps have been taken, but then they lost momentum. And now, if they're capable of doing that, the security problems will begin to fall into place. It's not quite right to talk about militias roaming the country. It makes it sound as though it really is the Wild West. Life in most of Libya, in Tripoli and in many other parts of the country, is normal, and life is much better now than it was under Gaddafi.
And yet, sir, there are reports of gun battles almost every day outside Tripoli. The Prime Minister himself was briefly kidnapped. That doesn't sound like a state that's doing quite well.
No, it's not doing well. As I said, it's extremely weak. There was a retired general who spent 20 years in America during the Gaddafi period actually announced a coup d'etat last week. And there was a rather good tweet on the subject, which was doing the rounds in Libya, saying it had its funny side because we have a coup d'etat but no army to carry it out, and the government has no army to end it. Life goes on. That's what the tweet said, and I think it's true. Life goes on.
And yet again, sir, there are all of these weapons that are still present on the ground, left over from Muammar Gaddafi's militias 3 years ago. What can be done to round up those weapons to control this continuing violence, which indeed is still happening?
It's a difficult problem, and it's causing problems not only in Libya but outside Libya, because the vast accumulation of arms that Gaddafi had made during his 40-odd years in power have been not properly protected, and they have fallen into all kinds of different hands. You're quite right. But a lot of them have been destroyed, and more are being destroyed. And what is needed is a central government with an army which will be able to tackle this problem seriously and get the people in the militias either to join the army or to hand over their arms. That process is going on. There are now, I believe, something of the order of 20,000 soldiers being trained outside Libya to form a new army, but it's slow, and it's slower than it should be. There's been, as I said repeatedly, a loss of momentum. That's the problem as I see it.
What about the members of Muammar Gaddafi's former government? Now, some reports are saying that they're reportedly starting their own political movement that would be aimed at more radical change in the country. Could that movement succeed? Could there be a return of Gaddafi's men?
No, I don't think so. I think that is very unlikely. It's true that there are some former supporters of Gaddafi who've not completely been eliminated or removed, but they have no leadership. I don't think they have any chance of reimposing their rule. The problem is rather the other way around, that nobody in Libya wants a strong ruler on the Gaddafi pattern, but they must have a government which is strong enough to deal with their problems, and that's the dilemma they haven't yet solved.
All right, thank you so much for that, Oliver Miles, for taking the time to speak to us. You're the former British ambassador to Libya, talking about the state there in the country 3 years after the revolution that ousted Muammar Gaddafi. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.